Today, we are gathered here to remember the lives and to recognize the work of some exceptional journalists, men and women who lived up to the highest standards of their profession. Agents of change who sought to uncover the truth, expose injustice, and bring necessary stories to life, no matter what the personal cost. In most cases, they made a conscious choice. They chose to walk a path that was not paved with gold, but with danger, to serve a higher human cause. In a world obsessed with profit and personal advancement, such a decision may seem unusual, risky, and out of the ordinary. Yes, that's why I call them exceptional journalists. Why would they choose such a path when there are safer and more lucrative options available? That is the central question. I believe the best way to honor them and appreciate their lives is to answer that very question. Why did they make that choice? What was the cause that was driving them? What were they trying to accomplish? And why does their work matter? They were trying to address the following fundamental human problem. It can be hard for us to care about people we cannot see, living in conditions we have not experienced, with predicaments we cannot understand. While our capacity as humans to love and care is limitless, in practice, our loyalties and sympathies are limited by who we know and what we know about their circumstances. Our moral compass, sadly, is often muted by a lack of awareness and preoccupation with the many challenges of our own life. After all, we are but human. Really, who do we know? Well, we know our family, we know our neighbors, our friends, and we understand others like us, those who may look like us, who may think like us, who may live like us, and who may share our spiritual beliefs. We care about them, monitor their well-being, rush to their defense when needed, and argue for policies that benefit them. This is the easy love. What about the harder love, which entails sympathy, care, and affection for those beyond our ken, who are unlike us, think differently, live far away in an environment we cannot contemplate? What about the farmer in Sudan impacted by climate change? The orphan child in Haiti? The refugee in Pakistan? The inner city mother shielding her child from drugs and gangs right here in America? Or the whistleblower's persecuted family in Russia? Behind each of these examples lurk thousands of stories, just like theirs in many geographies, stories which need to be heard. But to be heard, they first need to be told by someone who is willing to go there and take the necessary risks. When people far away are persecuted, endure financial and emotional hardship, lose their homes, or suffer the horrors of war, should we care? Most folks would say yes, absolutely. What happens to them does matter to us. We are, after all, one human race, connected by our humanity to one another. But to be one human race, we need to travel mentally to places we cannot go, places we may not want to go because of the risks involved. Who will build those mental bridges? Who will take those stories, those individual human threads, and weave a quilt of understanding and kinship to blanket this planet with? Who will shine light in dark corners, exposing injustice or neglect, sometimes awakening a conscience that has too long slumbered? Who else but journalists like the colleagues we lost in 2010 and the many before them that we remember today? These journalists were out to build links, not between cities or computers or governments, but between people. Not all the asphalt or fiber or wires in the world can create the human connection that a caring journalist can forge with words and images. The Committee to Protect Journalists profiles journalists killed as they cover a story. They document the stories these brave journalists were reporting and the reasons they were killed so that we may gain an appreciation of their work. It also serves to send a message to the perpetrators that while they may have silenced a messenger, the message continues to live on. As we look back to last year, here's what we saw. In Pakistan, the deadliest country for journalists in 2010, we saw reporters killed by suicide bombers as they covered public events. One tortured and killed for exposing underage marriages, others for reporting a tribal war, for documenting the activities of militants, and for criticizing police shootings. In Iraq, journalists were gunned down for encouraging religious harmony between Shiites and Sunnis, for covering the harassment of Kurds, several blown up by car bombs, others by suicide bombers. In Mexico, we saw journalists caught in crossfire between the military and drug traffickers. One killed for identifying a gang leader, another killed to bear a pinned message from a drug cartel, some for reporting on police corruption or for giving information to the military. In Indonesia, we saw targeted murders, killed for reporting on unlawful fuel sales, killed for covering inter-village violence, or for fraud in local elections. It goes on. Many countries, similar reasons, unfortunate deaths. Recently, many of us mourned the death of Tim Hetherington and Chris Honros, accomplished photojournalists killed in Libya. They were in some sense unusual. The first thing that strikes us when we look at the distribution of deaths is that most journalists killed are not Western correspondents sent to cover stories in a remote land. With a few exceptions, most are local to the story. They did what they did because they had the right context and the motivation to cover a necessary story in their own geography. Indeed, they exhibited the ability to cover it so effectively and disruptively that they posed a threat to the powers that be, and it cost them their lives. Many probably did not attend top journalism schools, like some of our local luminaries, but what they lacked perhaps in formal education, they more than made up for in terms of initiative and courage. They chose a path that exemplified the public service mission of journalism better than any book or thesis we might encounter on the subject. They chose a path that required them to look danger in the eye and say, I will document what I have discovered, no matter what the consequences. This kind of courage reminds us that for those who seek to produce true journalism, it is not a vocation, it's a calling. The kind of writing that can transform society and change the course of history takes a special kind of person. They were not in it for a Pulitzer Prize or a book tour. They were in it for the best of reasons, to make their corner of the world a better place for their fellow men and women. The service I created, and now head, Google News, was born nearly 10 years ago in the wake of the September 11th tragedy. I found it hard to keep up with the news from around the world. I therefore engineered a service to make links to worldwide reporting on any story accessible and easy to search. Now Google's news and search services send more than 4 billion visitors to news sites every month, which has a big impact on the world's understanding of current events. As I followed the death of Osama bin Laden, the perpetrator of those attacks, a few weeks ago on Google News, I saw thousands of articles covering the story from near and far. I realized we'd come a full circle, and I felt a sense of closure. About 8 years ago, shortly after the Iraq War had started, I was speaking to a well-regarded American political columnist. The topic was the Arab press and our ability to understand what the Arab street is thinking. He dismissed Al Jazeera as propaganda and opposed their inclusion in the milieu of credible news sources. 8 years have passed, and perceptions have changed. This year, with a wave of revolutions in North Africa, it is widely acknowledged that some of the best coverage and eyewitness footage we've seen has been from Al Jazeera. We have also seen some amazing videos from eyewitnesses on the ground, literally standing on that Arab street, shooting video from their phones and uploading it to YouTube, sometimes at great peril. This year, Columbia University's journalism school announced that it will bestow its most prestigious award, the Columbia Journalism Award, to Al Jazeera English. To me, this illustrates how far we've come in accepting that good journalism can come from everywhere. It's worth remembering that journalism and high-quality content continue to be important even as technology transforms the information ecosystem. A lot of what we encounter online is not carefully composed, nor is it intended to be insightful. In contrast, the work of a committed investigative journalist or a daring photographer is a reminder that prose and images can mean so much more. To have impact in an online world, you need to be online as well, and you need to interface with people in the manner and at the pace at which they consume information. We saw a tremendous public reaction to the events in Haiti, Japan, and in the Arab revolutions, and much of it happened online. While the medium may have changed, the principles that govern good journalism have not. Verification, objectivity, and commitment to the truth still remain paramount. As more journalism moves online, we observe how internet journalists and bloggers are increasingly coming under attack. In parts of the world where press freedom is severely restricted, print may not be available as an option for many, and critical reporting needs to be taken online. This invites hacking, online persecution, and for those unwilling to mask their identity, exposes them to considerable personal risk. Indeed, 6 online journalists killed in 2010, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists, were online. 6 online journalists were killed in 2010, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. They also found that online journalists now make up about half of all journalists in prison. I'd like to end with a personal story. My interest in journalism was sparked by my grandfather. He was 94, and he died just 2 weeks ago. We were very close. Growing up in India, I would sit with him as he listened to radio news, broadcast by the BBC World Service, 4 or 5 times a day without fail. My love for news and my appreciation for foreign viewpoints was born from that experience. I remember listening to the assassination of Indira Gandhi, a former Prime Minister of India, and the fall of the Soviet Empire sitting with him. My grandfather became deaf eventually, and he could not listen to the radio anymore. For his 90th birthday, I got him a substitute. I gifted him a subscription to The Economist in print. He liked it so much that he renewed the subscription himself. That's quite an endorsement if you consider how expensive it is in India and his modest means. Not only that, but his stack of economists developed a following. People would come to visit him, and they would end up reading the magazine. I realized, of course, that he was at it again, infecting others with his enthusiasm for news that matters. News that matters. What an important concept. As we look back on the lives lost in the service of journalism, it's worth remembering that while we cannot predict how and when we die, we can certainly choose how we live. The journalists we remember and honor today chose lives that were full of meaning and purpose. They chose to bring news that matters to people who care, to make the world a better place. For their courage and selflessness, we salute them. Let their stories not be forgotten. Let us repeat them. Let us retweet them. Let us print them on our pages so that the world knows that silencing a journalist simply does not pay. Thank you.